Have you ever felt like we're given so many conflicting ideas about how to do sex or have sex? Like you've got to be dominant and take the lead. You got to make sure that you get consent for everything you do. You got to make sure you please your partner, but you also got to focus on pleasing yourself. You got to schedule sex, but you also got to be spontaneous. You should tap into your fantasies, or you shouldn't be so lost in fantasy. You should be focused solely on your partner and not think about other people. You should have a lot of sex if you're healthy, or you shouldn't be so focused on having sex all the time. You should only have sex in the context of a loving monogamous relationship, or you should be free to have more than one partner. So it goes on and on. How can we ever feel like we're doing sex right? So welcome to the Nice Guy Show. I'm your host, Ari Graff. I'm here with my co-hosts, Chuck and Faisal. So how much are we trying to fit our sexuality into a box, trying to meet some standard of health or optimization? Faisal, what do you think?
I was just trying to count how many times you said the word sex. So this, it's interesting you bring this topic up because I was thinking about sex itself and not the act of sex, but like how we struggle with it, or what my journey was about, getting comfortable about sex. And there was a lot of shame around sex. There's a lot of expectations. And it's also something that if you do wrong or if you do bad, it's very apparent. And if you say, for example, you make a mistake or you haven't shown up or you're not competent enough, it's very evident. Because for us, if she's climaxed, she's orgasmed many times, it's like, yeah, I'm a champion, I'm great. There's a real metric to it. But it's very difficult for us to fathom the fact that if nothing happens or there isn't something that's achieved, for us to be okay with it. Either it's great and has to be amazing, or it's not. It adds a lot of pressure, I think.
Right. Doing a good job, whatever that is, and often we use the metric of, did she come? Did she have an orgasm?
Yeah, she's screaming wild and she's going, oh God, and you're like, yes, this is me. If you're not hearing that and you're thinking, okay, well, there's a big problem. I must be wrong. There's something dysfunctional here.
Right. And I think, yeah, it's clearly a problem if that's your only metric for what good sex is.
Yeah.
But we get so much conflicting information and advice about, what we're supposed to be doing and how we're supposed to be doing it.
Exactly. And I think a lot of people brag as well. So when they're talking about sex, especially the guys that sitting down in the bar and they're just, I'm like this. And I remember a friend of mine, he was saying, I had a great session for 12 hours. I'm like, 12? What were you doing for 12 hours? Was she there as well? So some of the guys, they're just really, I would say the real people pleasers, they're there for like 4 or 5 hours. And I've had guys who say, I've not had any sleep or I've come to the coaching session really tired and exhausted. And I'm like, what happened? He says, well, I was, having a real long session. And it was very focused on pleasing her, very one-sided.
So, Chuck, what about you? What kind of advice are you giving to nice guys about sex? Is there standard advice?
Well, yeah, first of all, I think, in the book, No More Mr. Nice Guy, Robert points out that nice guys settle for bad sex. And meaning that any kind of sex is better than no sex at all. So just the fact that I'm having sex with somebody else constitutes this feeling of like, oh, I must be okay. Because nice guys oftentimes will receive their validation from sex and their sexual partner. So if she orgasms or if it's a 12-hour session or, on any of those things, then that's the measurement of what they would call good sex. But good sex isn't, I think you can have good sex in 5 minutes, You can have good sex in 5 hours.
That's
not long.
But the point is that
he walked right into that one.
Yeah. The way the nice guys tend to view sex is they focus completely on their partner. You know, did she have an orgasm? And a lot of this is because, you know, if you please the woman, we've learned that if we please the woman, she'll stick around. If you don't please the woman, she'll abandon you. So this just kind of morphs into our sex life as well. And one of the things that Robert points out in the book that I think is really key and isn't talked about enough is he says, until you can have good sex without fantasy, without thinking about somebody else, without any kind of images, until you can do that with yourself, you're not going to be able to do it with somebody else. And so this comes back to the idea of healthy masturbation. And healthy masturbation is all about pleasing yourself, making sure you're okay. One of the things I'll tell guys is that you're not responsible for her feelings and you're not responsible for her orgasm. She knows how to come. All right. She knows how her body works. You literally don't have to do anything to make her orgasm. She knows how to orgasm. You know how to orgasm. All right. So she's responsible for her orgasm and you're responsible for your own. If she makes you responsible for her orgasm, guess what? That means you're the one who has to please her all of the time. And you just get into this thing. But the reality is like sex, good sex, should be two people who know how their body works, knows what they like, have great communication, are able to join together and please themselves. Sex. I just blew you away, didn't I?
He's
No.
just recovering.
No, it's you make it sound simple in a way, but I
It
think
is a little bit.
I think it is because you've done the work on yourself.
Yeah.
But you know, I suspect that it took a while to get there. You know, and
5
not
minutes.
5 minutes.
So, you know, one thing I'm wondering about is what have you learned about your sexuality, you know, your unique sexuality over the years? You know, because I don't think every man is the same or every woman is the same in terms of what's going to be satisfying. And that's actually one of my take home points is that for nice guys, just like you've got to understand what your feelings are and what your particular wants and needs are, you've got to figure that out in the sexual realm too, that it isn't necessarily the same for everybody. You know, some people might want to be more dominant, be more creative, have more sexual novelty than others, you know, and, you know, that can be healthy, just like a monogamous kind of traditional relationship can be healthy. But that's a lot to figure out for a nice guy. So, or for anybody rather. So, you know, what are some things that you've learned about yourselves over the years? How's
think-
your sexual approach changed?
I think the biggest change was focusing more on the whole aspect of sex. So, for example, we want to get to the deed, right? We just want to get to the fucking. And what happens is that the missing part is the whole build up to it, because we want to rush the process, and that's how guys will consume porn, is because they don't want the whole build up. They just want to get to the part where they're actually making out, you know, that they're doing it. And one of the things I've learned is to slow down and build a much more seduction, the foreplay, all of that, not just physically, but also emotionally, energetically, sexually, is to have that whole seduction path to sex. And for women, they experience that a lot more. It's more valuable to them just than the physical, you know, just getting on with it. It's a bit like food, like eating. So without foreplay, it's just getting a really nice gourmet meal and just chugging it down. So like quickly, I just want to eat it and just swallowing it. That's it, done. Now, when you have a really gourmet food or any kind of food, you just want to take in the aroma, the smell, the taste, and then slow down. Because when we're anxious, we just want to coolly consume it and get to the point. And I find that this has been the biggest help in my sex life as well. It's really slowing down and just taking time, enjoying it. And another thing that was really difficult for me, and it came back to me, was I was very uncomfortable with my whole body. So, for example, I remember in the early part of my personal development journey, I went to some tantric classes and sexual classes, and the trainer said, just touch yourself all over. And I was like, ugh, why don't it just felt really weird. Just like rubbing myself, touching myself, like feeling all of me. And it just felt really uncomfortable. The only comfortable places was obviously, masturbating, and that's it. But just really being sensual with myself was like, this is really awkward. It's like I felt really ashamed and wrong for it. And I remember only recently I was doing this early in the morning. I got up and I just spent time being very conscious and mindful of my whole body, just like touching it everywhere in a really, I would say, intimate but respectful and conscious way of really appreciating it. And it's very different from when I first started off.
Yeah, I would just echo all of that too, and that it's really about your nervous system, getting out of your head and into your body. When you're in your head and you're thinking about, am I going to maintain an erection? Am I going to come too fast? Is she going to come? Your limbic system alerts that you're in fight or flight, and guess what's going to happen when you're in fight or flight? You're not going to be having a lot of really good sex because your nervous system is going to hijack. But if you can take time, and that's where like Faisal was saying, the foreplay, to really enjoy it, it's about the destination. I mean, it's about the journey, not just the destination. And that we focus so much on the genitals and the orgasm, and that becomes kind of like the pinnacle, rather than being able to like slow down and really engage with the senses. What do I see? What do I hear? What do I smell? What do I taste? What do I feel? And really getting into the sensations of the body and out of the head, I think, is one of the best ways that you can start to remove the thinking piece of it. And that's really hard for us nice guys because most of us have ruminating brains. But the practice of meditation, the practice of slowing things down, the practice of embodiment work and those kind of things are amazingly helpful when you bring it into the sexual sphere of being able to slow down and just relax and be present and have it be about, how you're feeling and, take responsibility for your own orgasm.
I've got a question for you guys.
Yeah.
You talked about that we have to, just get really present into this. There is a myth, and I think this is a myth, that guys are always ready. Guys are always on. Yeah. I mean, are you guys always on, or is there a time where you think, no, I'm not ready for sex, or I don't want sex? Or are you guys always on?
Funny, age has has a way of kind of slowing that down. I think that there's, it's certainly like I was when I was, teenager and early 20s kind of thing. I'm not thinking about sex all the time, but it becomes a thing of, there's plenty of times where my wife's like, hey, you want to get with it tonight? I just want to go sleep. It feels like like I'm an old lady or something like that. But I think that there's a part of it that, when you're young, you don't have a lot of sexual experience, so it's like this most amazing thing that you're experiencing, so you want it all the time, And I think when you have aged and you've had sex as much as I have, you kind of go, all right, it's good. Let's do it tomorrow night, though, when I'm more refreshed. So yeah. I'm not always on by any means anymore.
But, what about you, Annie? Ari, would you prefer sex or a sandwich?
Pizza? Throw make a pizza.
Have you ever seen the Seinfelds where George Costanza mixes food and sex, and then he's got like a pastrami sandwich on the floor next to him? Well, check it out. We'll put a link to a YouTube clip for that. But I have a high libido, and I've realized that that is part of me. Like it's slowed down a little bit as I've gotten older, but I need that in a partner, and I don't want to apologize for that either. I think, one of the things I went through in my marriage was just since I had a dead bedroom, I felt like maybe I am boring, maybe I am uncreative with sex. So that was something that I had to break through. I think that's something that nice guys have to do in their recovery, is start breaking through their ideas about themselves and sex, and about women and sex. So, that was one of the beautiful things about getting divorced, is getting to experience and experiment with different things, to just be playful, be dominant, be dirty. So for me, like the mental aspects of sex are important. I think that embodiment piece is important, but talking dirty, role playing, that aspect of seduction, I find to be really fun. So that was something that, I discovered over time. So I do think nice guys, whether you're in a relationship or you're single, you should be able to experiment and figure out more about what you like in sex.
So Ari, what do you
yeah.
say? What's the dirty stuff that you talk about?
I'll tell you later, baby.
Come on, we can't tease the listeners, and then
I'll tell you in Mexico at the Integration Nation annual conference coming up in January.
Yeah, but you gotta text it to me. So, here's something else is what I help the guys with. It's really important that we have that sexual stimulation intellectually as well. Like talking dirty is so important. And for the guys, I always say to them, the best way to really get the whole aspect of the sex and everything else that comes in this realm, go and buy yourself an erotic novel. Just buy an erotic novel, erotic books, and that will give you insight to how women think. There's a lot of women who have wrote erotic novels, and you really get insight into, wow, this is what they're thinking. The details, the things that will never ever register in our head are in those books. The way the way you gaze at her, to lock your eyes onto her, is so erotic for her. So it's not just the sexual stuff, it's the sensual stuff. And I think this is where a lot of men miss out. It's bringing that sensuality to your sex, just puts it on steroids.
Yeah, I think when you read an erotic novel, I almost call it a neurotic novel. Erotic novel. It usually starts out with something like, I came home and the dishes were done and he was vacuuming and all the laundry was put away and I was so turned on. That's how women think.
Is that how you talk dirty? The laundry, look at this. There's a sock on the floor.
Completely out of the mood now.
When you bend over to pick up that sock, Chuck, beyond so much.
All right, guys, let's just keep this PG.
All right, so if you're a nice guy listening to this, or a nice girl, because I think nice girls go through something similar. Tell us, what kind of box have you been putting your sexuality into, and how are you breaking out of it? So thanks for listening to the Nice Guy Show. If you've liked this episode, we've got a lot of episodes on sex. Our cheating episode recently, our Does Size Matter episode. So check out our entire sex playlist. We'll see you next time.
You've been listening to The Nice Guy Show with certified Nice Guy recovery coaches Ari Graff, Chuck Chapman, and Faisal Khokhar. Be sure to subscribe to this channel so you can listen to our latest episodes, and visit us on www.theniceguyShow.com. If you have any topics you'd like to hear us discuss, send us an email at support@theniceguyShow.com. Thanks for listening.